Good afternoon and hello everyone. My name is Tyree Williams and I am your host. We are about to have a conversation called A Woman's Voice. Um, let's get right into it. I'm gonna introduce our panelists. It's a conversation with Black women and HIV, and I'm gonna start with our first panelist. Will be the amazing Miss Jacqueline Coleman.
Thank
Welcome.
you. Thank you for having me, Tyree.
Our next panelist will be Miss Dana Williams.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here. And thank you, Tyree, for inviting me.
Of course. Our next panelist will be Miss Bianca Ward.
Hi, thank you for having me. Happy Wednesday.
Thank you, thank you. And last but not least, Miss Carmarian Anderson D. Harvey.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me, Tyree. And hello to my fellow panelists. And happy Trans Day of Visibility also day. So thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. Welcome, ladies. Welcome. This is an amazing panelist of beautiful Black women. Oftentimes we don't get to see our Black women shine. So I'm gonna start off by letting each of our panelists introduce themselves. I'm gonna start with Jacqueline and work our way on in.
All right, then. Well, I bring all a special greeting. I'm Jacqueline Coleman, no middle name. I am coming live to you from Burlington, Vermont, where I'm having family vacation. And I simply want to be known as a servant leader. That's it. That's all. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Miss Dana.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Dana Williams. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Wellness Project here in St. Louis, Missouri. I've been doing HIV and AIDS work for over 30 years, and I also serve as a public health consultant for the Centers for Disease Control. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Bianca.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bianca Ward. I am a professional superhero working in HIV for almost 20 years now in Washington, D.C., and really excited to talk and share and learn from all of you.
Thank you, thank you. And last but not least, Miss Anderson Harvey.
Thank you so much. So my name is Carmarian D. Anderson Harvey. My pronouns is she, her, and hers, and I'm excited to be here. So I have a lot of intersectionalities. At the moment, what pays the bills, I'm the Alabama State Director for the Human Rights Campaign. Additionally, I have almost 2 decades of working in the field of public health, combating HIV in marginalized communities. And I am a proud clergy woman. That's the traditional and fundamental teachings and offer liberation and trans theology that's going to empower everyone that was created by our divine. So thank you so much again for having me.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So let's jump right into the questions. The first question we have will be, how does it feel being a Black woman in America at the moment? And anyone can jump in. I know.
What a loaded question, Ty. That's a loaded question. Well, I can share with you from my perspective, it's been really challenging. We've watched a lot over this last year, not only the death of friends and loved ones through COVID, but also people are still dying from HIV. So that's been really challenging. We're still seeing a lot of diagnosis, at least here in St. Louis. And so it's a struggle every day. We're looking at the injustice that our community has been dealt with. I'm sure you all have heard of the Michael Brown killing and all the other killings of Black and brown people around the country. And it's just been a really trying time, a stressful time.
Thank you.
I would definitely ditto a lot of that. At the same time, though, I think I'm feel empowered in this moment as well. I think the voices of Black women are being heard in a different way on a national stage. Just, I think folks are now really recognizing our magic, our resilience, our voice. I think we definitely saw that throughout the elections. The magic of Stacey Abrams, the organizing, the way that Black women bring community together. So I think especially this year has been extremely trying, but at the same time, I feel like we're hearing and appreciating Black women's voices in a different way that makes me feel proud.
Thank you, thank you. It's interesting being that March is International Women's Month, and that's why I want to start a question off with how did it feel to be a Black woman at this moment? Because with seeing everything like you all mentioned, it's definitely trying. So I appreciate answering that question. I know it's probably like we're already starting off the gate strong, but yeah. So we'll go to the next question. I appreciate it. What social and economic disparities do cisgender and transgender women encounter when seeking resources for HIV treatment?
I almost want to say, ooh, let me go first. Let me go first. I'm going to tie in the first question and then the second question. I think this is a privileged opportunity and a unique opportunity where we get a chance to listen from voices that are cis-identified women, and my voice sharing from a trans perspective as a woman. And when I look at the first question and then answer this question, the first question I will respond and say, it is hard being a Black woman of trans experience at this time. And I say that, and I'm bridging this because when you speak about resources, I'm looking at resources of how we even handling the pandemic, how we offer resources as it relates to HIV, and how funding is being provided in marginalized or the marginalized communities, such as women of trans experience. And I'm hoping that that our voices today can certainly come together to combat the resources, because I know for a fact that although Black women of trans experience lack tremendous resources as it relates to housing or employment, during this particular time, one, with the intersectionality of being Black, two, being a woman, and then three, being a marginalized community and having to label themselves other than, which is important for me to say, versus just saying we are women and we are all diverse, and us being able to come together and actually seeking for those HIV treatment and resources that's needed for holistic for the women community. We have an opportunity to come together as an army in our voices and our advocacy around what is needed for us as Black women. And then let us come together and we'll tell you how to allocate those funds through our levels of diversity and our narrative. So it's really hard here right now based off of us reduplicating the discrimination and the lack of resources we've seen from HIV dollars, and how we administer that through, in the community. And then we look at the pandemic, we're just remodeling that. So at the end, us that are women and us that are diverse and that are marginalized, we're still getting the short end of the stick. And it's not, I don't think, allowing us to thrive as such, but it does allow us to finally come together and bring all of our narratives to produce power and start challenging and combating what is right for us, that we did not get since day one.
You know what? I'd like to add to that, if I could, and
Please.
speak from the cisgender perspective. And I just want to do and just acknowledge the panelists, all of whom I admire so much. Tyree, you've asked a very profound question. And what I'd like to do is to answer the question with removing for HIV treatment. And if we end the question when seeking resources, period. Okay, because if when we sought resources, was celebrated, then when it came to HIV, anything, treatment or anything, prevention, then we would not be marginalized, as the previous panelists talked about. One of the things, and many of you know that I speak in terms of imagery, and I was looking at my baby sister Bianca. She and I have both worn the same color, but I'm wearing cowrie shells. And historically, we know what cowrie shells are for our community and for our history historically. They represent the strength and the power of the ocean. I also wear a huge hope diamond, that we are the hope, but are we treated as such?
Mm.
I also have on lace because as women, we want to be acknowledged for the queens that we are. However, in this country and many places, we are not acknowledged for who we are and the power for being the diamond in the community. So I would use the words of Sojourner Truth when she says, "Ain't I a woman too? Ain't I a woman? Don't I deserve? Don't we deserve resources so that we can live an abundant life as well?" And I know that later you're going to be asking us about ending HIV, but if we can end the phobias, the homophobia, the transphobia, racism, classism, if we can lower the bar and erase all of those other isms, we never would have been in the place that we are in now. So I'll stop there and see what my sister Dana and Bianca and others have to add about that. Is that we're dealing with not only disparities around HIV treatment, we're dealing with disparities where our very lives are at stake.
Hmm.
I hope
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, Jackie, I definitely agree with you. I think in addition to that, typically as Black women, we are taking care of everybody in the household. So it's just not our needs, which often get pushed to the side. It's the needs of our community and the needs of our families. And when we start looking at the economics right now and the lack of jobs and resources and ability to support our families, it's just taking a toll. I just had a 23-year-old test positive a couple of weeks ago. That was the first woman that had tested positive for us in our area in a couple of years, actually, from our agency. But women getting infected with HIV is not new, and it hasn't gone away. Yet all the resources right now are geared toward other populations of people, and women are still becoming infected and at risk for HIV. So what are people doing in terms of supporting women in your community, women who
Exactly.
are living with HIV? That's what I would
Exactly.
ask.
And I would add, just come back to Dana because she and I have trained together, is what does that say to us? Does
Yeah.
that say that, oh, you're a diamond for real? Or does it say you're other than and you don't even belong in the world, that we could care less about you? And what do we tell us? The story that what we tell ourselves is also equally important.
Yes.
Wow, wow.
It's
That
a wow.
that's
It's a
Yeah.
big wow.
yeah. Bianca, do you have anything to add? I know that was a lot.
I think I think Miss Jackie said it perfectly when she talked about all of the other isms that we know contribute to these disparities. So how do we address those? And therefore, because community health looks a lot of different ways. What resources are available? Which ones um, are not being used or accessed or that we don't have access to? How are we letting folks in our community know what is available to them? How are we supporting our sisters in and encouraging them to prioritize their own health and well-being? I believe Ms. Dana was just mentioning that we are often taking care of everyone else, um, and then not taking care of our own health and our own needs. And part of that is because we don't have the time or we don't have the energy to, or we're putting ourselves on the backboard burner to support everyone else. So what does it look like for us to encourage our sisters to prioritize their well-being?
Yeah. And I
Well,
don't want us to forget our Sisters of Trans experience
Mhm.
either. The government is just now putting out dollars to focus on our Sisters of Trans experience. Well, that should have been happening way before now.
Absolutely.
way before now. And so now everybody's in a panic. Oh, let's do something. Let's do something. Well, there's those of us that have been around, all my sisters on this panel, who have been doing something.
Exactly.
We have.
That's
We're trying to
right,
get
right.
everybody to catch up to where we are. So I don't want us to forget about our trans sisters of our sisters of trans experience.
I appreciate that. Bianca, you made a great statement earlier where that leads into my next question, and I think it needs to be addressed is what is needed to address the health disparities amongst black women. You know, like that's a real question.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All of the things. It is a real question, but at the same time, it's often loaded because I think every woman every black woman may answer that question differently, right? So I think it is really about creating systems and supports that are people centered, where they are determining what, and I believe it came up earlier about putting those resources back into community for them to determine what it is that they need. I'm a mother of two small kids. My needs might look different than, let's say, my own mother or anybody else. So think, and I think the first thing, just period, is listening and asking women, asking black women what it is that they need, and then empowering those around them to make sure that they have the resources that they need in order to address the health disparities. Because there's layers to it. It's about economics. It's about what community resources look like. It's about, do you live in a food desert? Do you have access to sufficient transportation, education, water? Like there's so many levels to it. But if we're not going to the people directly and saying, what is it that you need, not to survive, but to thrive, because I think we want to get past survival. I think a lot of times, there's this feeling of just trying to make it through the day, which is absolutely true. But if we want black women to be able to live their full, true, healthiest selves, we need to ask them, what do you need in order to thrive?
I will agree with you, Bianca, and I'm gonna pick up somewhat where you left off. I think that this question, I don't think there, lack of word, right or wrong. I think there's going to be multiple responses based off the region you live in, the jurisdiction, regional culture, and so forth. What I have seen as a woman and a woman of trans experience and being Black, there is some commonality that I can speak to this question about. Is one, let us have permission of our own bodies. Let us teach you about us. Don't assume. How about that? Let's not assume. So, I give you that permission. And if you assume, then you're going to leave me out of the equation. The reason why we're still having conversation about dollars and about other things such as visibility, in campaigns, trying to reduce the epidemic within Black women communities, whether that's cis or trans. We don't even have the visibility. We don't even have the visibility at the table of decision to advocate for those communities. And so that's something that's common. I also think, as well, as a Black culture, no matter where you live, we have to make sure that we are demanding us being empowered as Black women. We said earlier, there's this wonderful positive assumption, and it's true, but we're more than just keeping the house, and we're more than just cooking and cleaning. We're more than just whenever you want to lie with us, or we're more than just the theology approach of what a woman is, a helpmeet. No, we're beyond that, and we have to challenge and we have to command our leadership as Black women and use our voices and stop just using our body language. You understand what I'm saying, right? Because two different things. And I think the final thing I'll say is that we have to call out this non-stigmatizing language that labels us when it comes down to HIV. We have to counsel those non-stigmatizing language that puts us and write us. That's not our narrative, and that's not how we're living. We're not less than. We are actually leading. If they came to us first, then they would have had more of a blueprint from our nurturing side to know how to combat HIV and any other disproportionate population, but they didn't. So therefore, we need to show up. We need to be at these tables of decision. We have to also make room for other voices. You know, I'm old now, I say. I have to make sure that my babies who are women, where this epidemic is going to affect their generation, also is at the table as well. That's collective of a response that I have seen, but I do think that it will be very diverse based off the area and jurisdiction and regional areas that you live in. And I also think that I'll go back to it. I think funding dollars also alters our responses based off who's getting the money and who's not. Because I'm from the Deep South, and I tell you, we don't get a lot of money. To combat other priority populations. So we have to be creative. And then there is something about being fatigued through advocacy. You understand what I'm saying? And so we got to have these intentional conversations, and we have to come together and respond in a manner that's going to produce change, and it just doesn't fall on deaf ears.
Tyree, can I also add to that? I know you probably got some other questions, but you know you got four sisters here. And I know you said, wait a minute, you all, can I host? Can I serve as host? But I do
This is
want
your
to put
voice.
something, I do want to put something else on the table in addition to everything that my sisters have talked about. And that is let's look at a psychological, spiritualist way
Yes.
of putting that on the table. I must. So keywords, okay, so that I can be brief. One is womanism. Two is feminism.
Mm-hmm.
Three is worth. Four is efficacy. And I think that we have to also kind of color and layer all of our interventions with these kinds of mentalities because we're not men, because we're women. And we think different, we move different, we breathe different. And
Mm-hmm.
that is also why we are so powerful. However, I go back to the cowrie shells that we are strong as the ocean, but yet we are as soft and vulnerable as lace. And so it is that just position that we always must consider when we are talking about intervening with Black women. And then finally, I want to offer this, sisters, and to the listening audience, because I am always going to hold us accountable as well. And this is, you know, many of us have done the work collectively. We've done the work probably close to 80, 90, 100 years. However, you know, there will come a day when we must change our rhetoric and our mindset away from what they give us in terms of what we give us. Because the Black community is a trillion times $1 trillion industry. We hold purchasing power, and we do and buy and we buy what we want. Okay. And so we have to also learn how to prioritize ourselves because anything we really want, we oftentimes can obtain. So I want us to begin to hold our own health accountable as well, and that we, engage self and social determination, and so that we hold each other accountable, and that we are like the Black Renaissance. We need to have another Black Renaissance. And I ask the question: Who will lead it? Will it be us? Who will lead the next Black Renaissance?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I also think too that we have to think about I like what you said, Jackie, about our overall health. It's not about just the physical, but the mental health as well. I think there's a level of social conditioning that we've just been used to, and we're just moving along. And I think Bianca said it, not just surviving, but thriving. I think we've been in such the survival mode that we've stopped thriving. We're just allowing situations to occur and to happen. And I would say my generation hasn't done its job, I don't think, well, in going back and reaching back and educating our young women about what it means to thrive. What does that really mean? What does that actually look like? When I'm working with some of the women, the very high risk women that I work with, it's almost, unimaginable. They're living in love and hip hop. And this is not love and hip hop. This is real life. And so we're not living in reality. And we need to deal with the issues of our mental health, because if we don't deal with the mental health, we cannot deal with the physical health. And so we've got to start addressing some of these real issues. We are traumatized. We are allowing certain social conditioning to impact our behavior and the way we think and do and move. And we can no longer afford to do that. We cannot, if we expect to thrive.
Yeah. And that's advocacy right there, Dana. And I actually call you mama. So if the audience hear me say mama, that's my mama, y'all. But that's advocacy. And I think you just addressed something here. If you can, then I need my other sisterhood to show up and use and know their voice is powerful as well. Absolutely. We can't address an issue if we're unaware what that issue is from that individual collectively in that environment or community. And so it will have to, there will have to be a moment where we have to be bold enough to talk what we want. And for institutions and those that are tokenizing the women community, the Black women community, you have to make room for us to share those voices. You have to make room for us to be at that table. So, it's a circle accountability, what Auntie Jackie was talking about, being accountable within our community, but we also are in the same position to hold accountable for those that say that they're working on our behalf or advocating, or if we notice that that money should have came to us and this is why and why it didn't. Go collect them receipts, baby. Put them on blast. Right. Use your voice and do what you have to do. We have enough soul. If there wouldn't be a love in hip hop if it didn't come from y'all generation, that translates to my generation to have attitude, to demand what's right for me. And we got to be in position to do so and not worry about trying to stay in a clique or trying to stay in an environment that's not really suited for you or losing something. You will gain more. I feel like I'm preaching. See, Tyree, I said I wasn't going to do this, but you will gain more by opening up your mouth. And this conversation is a start. If you don't know how to formulate, take any bits and pieces, what we've said, and use that as a start. And practice just do not make perfect. It makes permanent. We are witnesses here. That's the reason why we can have this conversation. That's the reason why we can hold ourselves accountable and the other sister panelists on here accountable. The reason why we got the invite, because at some point we got to build an army. We're not in Ezekiel anymore. We're not dry bones. We are living and thriving in our own community, and we must demand what's ours so we can thrive and not just have this mentality of surviving. That is a traditional curse that we have adopted, and we got more locked in us that we can make a difference for our health holistically.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Oh man.
You
I'm
can
learning.
have the mic back, Tyree.
No, it's fine. No, it's listen, it's definitely called a woman's voice. I mean, you only can speak from experience. I definitely can't speak from a woman's perspective, so I want to know the truth, and that's what we're here for. Y'all give us a hard-bone truth. And our sister need to hear it. So I'm gonna switch gears a little bit to a little controversial question, because we talk about accountability, but what does that actually look like when there's mistrust? So with the next question, what do you think should be done to address the lack of participation by Black women in HIV clinical trials in the United States?
Woo!
You say, you said where the money going to, so we know that's part of the money and the dollars. So that's a real question.
Well, I think it's more about the clinical mistrust of the medical community. I don't think that has anything to do with women specifically. I think it's really more about the mistrust of the medical community in general. We already know what, look at COVID right now. I'm not going to even talk about the Tuskegee study, but let's just talk about right now with people not wanting to get the shot, the COVID shot. Why? And I'm listening to my own kids say, well, no, they didn't do stuff right. Scientists don't really know. We're gonna wait and see what happens to somebody else. Well, what, we're gonna wait till you get it and die from it? Because then it's too late. So what is the real reason why there's such mistrust? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. I think that's good, Mama Dana. I think I often think when we think about clinical trials from a woman perspective, but yet alone to deepen my thoughts from a Black woman of trans experience, tokenization is real. And when we speak about mistrust, there is no relationship that has been built for you to be able to prick on me and then don't use what you've pricked out of me. Okay, so that produced a lot of mistrust. I want to talk from a lens from Black culture, because we have other panelists certainly that I'm sure that's going to chime in more about the mistrust in clinical trials. But I need to share this. It's my duty to serve this gospel to the hearers. Religion and faith community. We have a God that we believe in, for those that believe in the divine, that will heal us. But God also created common sense in us. Okay. So, we cannot, I'm looking at, even from an HIV treatment lens and, from the COVID-19 pandemic vaccination, we can no longer be in position. Yes, our faith will remain strong, but we have enough faith to also make sure we put faith in what God has created to keep us healthy. We have to show up and get tested. We have to show up in these clinical trials in order for the scientists to take their academia and whatever faith they have or that we put in them to be able to create what's going to allow us to live and thrive and healthy. And so we got to stop having this mentality that my faith is strong. I don't believe in that. I'm going to be healed. Do you know how many religion and faith preachers and pastors of mega congregations that preached that rhetoric and then died in their pulpit? Okay. That's no tea nor shade. I'm good in Pentecostal. I preach the blood of Jesus. It still works. But we also got to think about common sense. Is reality? We lay that Bible on us because that gives us instructions. But our faith is moved in action. And clinical trials, for those that have mistrust in the Black community, especially in the South, that live by the Bible, then we should be on the front line, because we are supposed to give ourselves through witnessing so others can also live. And that's how I view the clinical trials for Black communities, especially that are spiritual, that it's our duty to do so. I get it. We have been tokenized, and I get it, but we be tokenized and we remove ourselves from that environment. But who is going to stay to challenge that is the conversation, to get it right. They can connect with us that are Black women, so we can ensure to have the data and the proper medication that our bodies that was created needs. So we wouldn't have this division that we have among just even Black women, trans women, cis women. Now let us come together and let's challenge and show up in these clinical trials, and let's teach them how to get it right so we can reduce medical mistrust when we show up.
I'm not sure how many other questions we have, but I would love to add something, but I really want to follow Bianca because I know that she has done some good work, in the community. I just want to add one thing after you, Bianca, if you are interested in speaking to this question.
I love you.
I love you more.
She put you on spot.
I love you.
So two things that came to mind. A lot of things. One, are Black women being invited into HIV clinical trials? And I ask that because, having worked in HIV for a very long time, I can think of me, I statement. very few either campaigns or outreach or very deliberate efforts to engage Black women. And also, going back to what was stated earlier, is then the question is, which I see right here, what I was about to say, who is inviting those Black women into these trials? We know that as our community, we listen to and often believe those that are closest to us, in our circles, in our communities, in our church. That is where we often find guidance. So all through COVID, I am blessed to know a lot of Black women healthcare providers, so doctors, nurses, and I'm asking them, what do you guys, what do you think of this, or what about this, and really reaching out to my network, to the people in the community that that I trust. And I think that that is a big part of it. So at the same time, when we want to engage Black women in these clinical trials, who are the messengers? And how do we know, and how are we keeping them safe through the process? Meaning not just tokenizing them, but also looking out for their best interests in the long run. I stand very firmly in science. I'm also very rooted in faith. But at the same time, I want to make sure that whatever we are telling our sisters and encouraging them to do is rooted in those same things, faith and safety.
I wanted just to add to what Bianca just said, and I don't have the answer to this question. But what I will say is that there is, an African proverb, beside one thing stands another. The question is HIV treatment, but and also as we look at COVID and some of these other comorbidities, what we're seeing from a lot of research, and this shocked me, and some of this research has been done by Kaiser Family Foundation, is that in our community, that fear and distrust, mistrust of the medical research community is not a direct correlation between our not seeking treatment and seeking vaccines and seeking to be part of clinical trials and
Right.
stuff. So we have to understand that what we're talking about is multi-layered. As Dana said earlier, it is a coin that we can flip over and over and over again. There is no one answer for all of us. And
Mm-hmm.
I would also gently remind us that as we talk about Black women and Black women's experience, that the diaspora is rich and it is broad and is very expansive,
Mm-hmm.
reaching from ocean to ocean, also to the Virgin Islands and our territories as well.
Mhm.
So I think that we readily oftentimes grab hold to mistrust based upon what they did to us before. And I'm not altogether sure that that is completely so, based upon what everyone has said. But in particular, Bianca, I think we just got to see our people at the forefront. And again, I go back to our purchasing power. We've got billionaires,
Mhm.
trillionaires who have the melanin that we have. We need to be appealing to them to also set up these research arms to fund Black researchers so that we can also add to the body of knowledge that is out there for us to build
Mm-hmm.
upon. I'll stop
Absolutely.
there because I know you got other rich questions and our time is fleeing.
Thank you. That's so definitely is a challenge to the medical field. When it comes to clinical trials, we want to see people that look like us. We want to see, so that's a challenge to make sure we have more, not only women, but more Black women involved in these trials. So that's definitely a challenge that we can put out there. So this is the conversation about a woman's voice. So I have to be a little advocate, the little devil's advocate a little bit and play it. So what can male counterparts do to make women's healthcare access more equitable in a predominantly male field? Oh, y'all gonna smile at me now?
Well,
I want to jump in. Can I
yeah,
jump
go ahead,
in?
Jackie.
I,
Yes,
I want to jump in and stuff, and I want to. This is all I'm going to say about this. I want to read a poem for a second, if you all don't mind, and it is all of 6 lines. And many of you all have heard it, but I wanted to get it in, and then sisters, you all take the ball and run with it. You take the hope jewel and go on and wear it. And it's called "Won't You Celebrate with Me?" And it goes like this: Won't you celebrate with me what I have shaped into a kind of life? I had no model. Born in Babylon, both non white and woman. What did I see to be except myself? I made it up here on this bridge between starshine and clay, my one hand holding the other tight, my other hand. Come celebrate with me that every day, something has tried to kill me and has failed.
mm, mm.
Wow.
Come celebrate with me.
Wow. So powerful, Jackie. Just
Hmm.
as usual, you always come up with these fabulous poems that really take us there. But I put the onus not on men, but on ourselves. We are our own self saviors. We need to step up and make sure that we are doing what we need to do to take care of ourselves. Because without us, there
Mhm.
is no men. So we need to be responsible for us. I think that men can definitely be supportive. They can encourage. They can insist. But at the end of the day, you are responsible for you. It's the same thing we talk about when we talk about the transmission of HIV and people being sexually responsible. It is not up to your partner to protect you. It is up to you to protect you. And I feel the same way about our overall health care. We have to be our own self advocates. We need to step up and make sure that we're doing whatever it takes to take care of ourselves. We can't take care of family. We can't take care of our partners or anybody else if we're not taking care of ourselves. In Africa, they have a saying that if you educate a woman, you educate the village. We are the village. So we need to do what we need to do to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves.
The only thing I'll add from my narrative as a woman is I look at this question more as anyone to advocate to make sure that there's diversity, to make sure that those that are in position to recognize the lack of diversity that they have. So if that are women in those fields, to call it out and make room for us. Also, recognizing that in this field, we need to probably have more conversation about reproductive justice. And if we have those conversations about reproductive justice, along with our public health initiatives, if that's HIV testing for women, if that's PrEP or pre-exposure prophylaxis for women, don't forget PEP, the emergency 72-hour. If we do that also from a reproductive justice lens, I will have to say adamantly, they'll have no choice but to diversify and include us as Black women in these conversations. And I'll take the personal privilege to say, because we know our bodies. And a book can't teach them all the ins and outs of our bodies. And they're going to need our voice. And I think that if we had more of a diverse of what we're offering or wraparound service to what we need holistically, we could see that diversity. But overall, anyone who is not noticing that level of diversity in their institutions should be advocating to see those diversity, because that will represent and also benefit the community as it relates to reducing epidemics, because that diversity means everything.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Carmen, you mentioned a bit of really good word when you say diversity when it comes down to the women in health field, well, women in health in general, which definitely would lead me to my next question. Would be, what are some changes or even solutions you would like to see around trans and cisgender women in health?
Mm-hmm.
Solutions.
Right, because oftentimes we always point out what the problems are. This is this where like you mentioned, it's only geared towards maybe just cisgender. We don't include the trans women. So, what are some changes or the solutions we want to see? I want to because oftentimes we always hear about the problems. So, what can we do to fix it, or what could be done to fix it? Y'all the experts, right?
Mhm.
Well,
Give us the money.
I would add that basically, Tyree, you know what, you're a fantastic moderator. In my opinion, we've been talking solutions all day. We've been talking solutions for decades. The question is, have we been heard? And stuff, but we've been talking solutions. We've been talking about creating tables. We've been talking about funding Black researchers who look like us. We've been talking about holism in our health. We've been talking about embracing not just in seeing us as a physical shell, but seeing us as a spiritual, psychosocial, entity of power, of strength, of dynamism. We've been talking solutions. I think it's time for us to get to some action. We just gotta go on and take some action. Dana and I and all of us have been involved in community planning. Where you know what, community planning had a good run, is still going on. But the fact of the matter is, our ancestors community planned. Okay, that's not a new phenomenon and stuff.
I
And
love
so
it.
what we got to do is just be about the business. And you know what? I'm going to go back to something Dana said about the hip hop culture. I'm all for it. Hip hop, do what you got to do. Just be safe. Just be safe.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
don't decry our melanin as a result of what you do. You know what I'm saying? We got to learn how to let people be who they are in their essence and stop, judging so much and allowing people to coexist. Part of what, my work and my modeling is, especially around some of these injustice issues, is step one is about tolerance. To learn how to tolerate somebody else, to tolerate somebody else's existence, and judge less and be able to bring our best, our finest to the table to serve. And quite frankly, is make room at their table. How about we bring our own table?
Mhm.
Our people know how to create stuff. We make furniture. We make the chairs that other people sitting in.
Hmm.
We made the traffic light that everybody else stops at every day. Okay, so let's stop underestimating the power, the authority, and the efficacy of our people and what we can do and what we can be. Let's just go ahead and start being,
Mhm.
doing, and
Mhm.
stop doing so much talking about it. Let's be about it.
Call to
I am
action.
going to, yes, get, Miss Jackie, you gotta tell us what we need to do.
Mhm.
um, I'm gonna go back to the money for just a second because I was on a call earlier today with some federal partners, and one of them said something that was like, huh, and he just happened to, we were talking about something totally different, but happened to say the programs with the money, those are the ones that have more voice, essentially, as he was talking about
Mhm.
Brian White and CARE, et cetera. And so when we think about the solutions, a lot of it is rooted in funding, funding programs, funding community, funding ideas and policies that are ran and uplifted by the folks who who need them. So more programs, more money going to cis and transgender women about their health in order for them to write the story and the narrative in order for them to thrive. And I think there's so many barriers a lot of times to who can access grants and how are they selected and who gets funded. All of these barriers are we know are created for a reason. But at the same time, I think a lot of it, unfortunately, starts there in order to, we have, there's so many brilliant minds, brilliant folks that don't necessarily have a 501c3 or that are seeing all of these things, but they have passion, they have community behind them, they have the folks that will also support and uplift. What does it look like if we put money back into and resources back into the hands of trans and cisgender women to be able to say, you know what your community needs, or you and this group of folks know what you all need. Here is here are the resources, and it's people power, but a lot of times it is dollars to get these things started. Your need for housing, your need for education, employment, food, whatever the case may be, but giving those resources to the people who are going to listen to community and be good, and also be good stewards of those funds, because we also want to be clear with that as well. But when we talk about with solutions and with change, unfortunately, it does come dollars. It comes passion and drive, yes, but there has to be money behind it. I love what Miss Jackie said about, our own Black researchers, et cetera, and our buying power is phenomenal. So maybe we're not going to federal partners. Maybe we are looking within community to sponsor, to support, to put the dollars behind actually serving people.
I think for me, I when I am listening to my panelists, I also want to be sensitive to community. And if I was a community member who have not worked in this field or who is seeking services, I want to respond somewhat in that type of position. I think as women, regardless if you're cisgendered or women or trans identified women, period, we negotiate a lot each day. We negotiate family. We negotiate our work hours. We may be single with children. We may need housing. We just negotiate a lot. And when we speak about some of the changes and even solutions that's needed to help us, I want to first start with the referral process. When we show up, is that, and I'm going to be very humorous when I say this, but I mean this, perhaps I don't need a feminine hygiene bag. I may need you to help me pay for daycare so I can concentrate and put my health when I'm not negotiating my responsibilities as a Black woman in this hard, cruel world. From the first question, I may need more resources that's going to help my day to day. I'm thinking about, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, and heaven forbids if my son was young and we're living during this COVID time, could I really work full time and also help my child do full time school and still think, and still feed my family and still hustle for my family? And now all of a sudden I also need to think about my health. That's a lot of negotiation. So I think referrals that can step in to look at people's individual needs and make partnerships with organizations such as daycares, such as housing authorities, and things like that will look at not just the social determinants of our health as Black women, but look at the social determinants of the reality to help our health, is basically what I'm trying to say. And the only plug I'll put in for my trans identified community women is that for gender care services that are being offered, it's a circle accountability. We need to do more outside of providing PrEP and using 340B or whatever funding you're using to give us hormone treatment. You need to teach us that it's important for a woman of trans experience to still get her prostate checked.
Okay.
Or a trans-identified male who shows up at a reproductive justice clinic. It's important for you to tell them that a Pap smear is still important. Teach us and affirm us that our bodies is positive to us. It's a great start, because if we are taught that as a woman of trans experience, then I see myself in a whole different light that will help me understand that my health is on the forefront, although I'm trying to negotiate and find resources so I can thrive as a Black woman and as well of trans experience.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. This has been a phenomenal conversation, but I definitely want to respect everyone's time. I got one last question, and I would want everyone to answer it if you can answer it in like as quick as possible. But please be truthful because I'm loving all this energy and all this like I'm loving this. Um, but in a perfect world, how would you like to see trans and cisgender women working together to end the healthcare epidemics?
Okay. Well, I think we're already doing it. As the executive director here at Community Wellness, I have transgender women working for me and with me, addressing their needs. I think something that Jackie said earlier, show me the money. We already know what needs to happen, but I cannot do that if I'm not adequately funded and I can fund and pay for the work that my trans girls do for their community. And we aren't doing that. I'm tired of the talk. Talk is cheap, and everybody's talking, but nobody's doing. We need to step up and start doing. And I need our federal partners and all the other folks who can contribute to the pot to contribute and let us do what we do best, and that's serve our people. And
Yeah.
that's just not happening. Unless you are of the population that is most at risk or most in need from other folks' perspective, then everybody else get put to the wayside. I'm a black woman leading a black ASO, and I can tell you there are very few of us around that are left. Why? Because there is no money. Money.
Yes.
It takes money to survive. It takes money to run programs. It takes money to provide services. It takes money to keep this office running and to keep our girls employed, our folks employed. So that's what I need for folks to do. Step back, give me the money, and let me do what I need to do and get the job done.
Yeah. I would add real briefly one line, and that is something that Dr. Angelis Arian talked about, and that is the braided way. The braided way is it's not the old way, the old school way, and it's not the new hip hop way. It is the braided way that we have to learn how to bring it all together, and to figure out how to make the time to come to the table and create the new way, which is innovation. We have to innovate. If we don't, we're lost. Thank you for having me too, Damien Ministries. And by the way, I served on the board of Damien for a number of years. And so I'm happy to see Damien is still doing the do. Thank you.
And I think to answer real quick for the question, I'll speak from a woman of trans experience, and this is to bring us more together with our sister siblings. Is that when we show up, please treat us accordingly as you would treat yourself as you're looking in the mirror. Accept us as women. Let us have one definition. I'm not showing up to sleep with your man or to your staff. I'm trying to make a coin so I can survive and live and
Thank
thrive.
you.
So I think that's important for me to share. And then for my community, let's show up as powerful as we know how, and not showing up as disappointing or being a victim, expecting that a woman, when we show up, can empathize with us because we both possess something identical, and that's nurturing. And we should use that to lead our bondship so we can reduce the HIV epidemic that we're seeing in our collective communities.
Come on, daughter.
Absolutely. And I will just um, all the things that were already said, but just a reminder that we are more alike than we are different, and just how strong we are together. Period. Um,
Period.
there's the period. That's it.
Period.
I was gonna say something else, but I have officially dropped the mic. We are stronger together.
You said it, Sissy. You said it.
Wow.
Sure did. Period.
It was a grand time, everyone. Thanks.
This
Absolutely.
is this has been a beautiful conversation with some very powerful, intelligent black queens. I'm not gonna say black women, I'm calling them black queens because that's who they are. Give them roses while they still can smell them. If you didn't know, this was a woman's voice. This was a conversation with black women ending HIV. If you don't know, these are some powerful black women right here. If you don't have them, or you don't know how to reach out to fund black women or black women businesses, you have resources right here in your face. You have Miss Dana Williams, you have Miss Carmarian D. Anderson Harvey, Miss Jacqueline Coleman, Miss Bianca Ward. These are all black queens. And I want to say thank you for coming. Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here. Damon Ministries, thank you. We see you. We love you. And thank you.
Oh, we
Thank
love you
you.
too. Let's do a
Thank
Thank
you,
part
you.
two
Heather. Thank
soon.
you.
Take good care, sisters.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all.
Bye,
Thank
sisters.
you.